Hey there, I'm Unique. And if there's one thing that fascinates me, it's how different societies decide to take care of their people. It's like a giant, incredibly complex puzzle where the pieces are human lives, economic policies, and deeply ingrained cultural values. Welcome to our deep dive into the social welfare systems of China and Israel. Today, we'll explore how these two countries support their citizens in various aspects of life. From the moment you're born, to your school days, your working life, and into retirement, the state plays a role. But how big a role and what kind of role? That's where things get really interesting. China, a nation of staggering scale and rapid transformation, and Israel, a smaller country forged in unique historical circumstances, offer us two incredibly distinct models. We're not just talking about numbers and laws here. We're talking about the fundamental contract between a state and its citizens. How does a country with over 1 billion people approach universal healthcare versus a nation with a population smaller than many major cities? What does security mean in these contexts, and how is it provided? It's a journey into policy, yes, but also into philosophy and the very real, everyday experiences of millions. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a comparative exploration that will, I hope, illuminate not just the systems of China and Israel, but also make us think a little more deeply about the systems we live under ourselves. We'll be looking at everything from healthcare and education to pensions and parental leave, trying to understand the goals, the mechanisms, and the outcomes. It's going to be a lot, it's going to be complex, but I promise it'll be thought-provoking. Let's get started. Alright, let's kick things off with something absolutely fundamental to human well-being: healthcare. How do China and Israel ensure their citizens can access medical care? In China, the ambition is vast. They aim for universal healthcare. Imagine the sheer scale of that undertaking for a population exceeding 1.4 billion people. The current system is a complex tapestry woven from various public insurance schemes, primarily the Urban Employee Basic Medical Insurance, Urban Resident Basic Medical Insurance, and the new Rural Cooperative Medical Scheme. These are designed to provide a basic level of coverage, but the reality on the ground, as we'll see, is nuanced and varies dramatically. One of the defining characteristics of China's healthcare system is its regional variation. What's available and affordable in a megacity like Shanghai or Beijing can be a world away from the provisions in a remote rural province. This disparity often mirrors economic development, meaning wealthier urban areas generally have better-funded hospitals, more advanced medical technology, and a higher concentration of skilled medical professionals. While public insurance schemes are in place to cover basic needs, the definition of basic can be quite restrictive, often leaving significant gaps in coverage, especially when it comes to serious illnesses or specialized treatments that require cutting-edge technology or expensive pharmaceuticals. This brings us to a critical issue in the Chinese healthcare experience: out-of-pocket expenses. Despite the existence of public insurance, many individuals and families find themselves facing substantial medical bills. The reimbursement rates from insurance can be low, and many newer or more effective drugs and treatments might not be on the approved list, pushing the financial burden onto the patient. This can lead to situations where families deplete their savings, go into debt, or even forego necessary treatment because of the cost. It's a persistent challenge that the Chinese government is continually trying to address through ongoing reforms, aiming to reduce this financial strain and make healthcare more genuinely accessible for everyone. Now let's shift our gaze to Israel, a much smaller nation, but one with a very robust and comprehensive approach to healthcare. Israel operates a universal healthcare system mandated under its national health insurance law, which was enacted in 1995. This law is a cornerstone of Israeli social policy, establishing healthcare as a fundamental right for every citizen. It requires all residents of Israel to be enrolled in one of 4 official, non-profit health funds, known as Kupot Holim. These funds are responsible for providing a legally mandated, comprehensive basket of health services to their members, regardless of their age, income, or pre-existing conditions. The 4 health funds, Clalit, Maccabi, Mohedet, and Lumit, are central to how Israelis access care. While they are independent organizations, they are tightly regulated by the government and operate on a non-profit basis. Citizens have the right to choose which fund they belong to, and can switch funds annually if they wish, which introduces an element of competition based on service quality, accessibility of clinics, and additional services offered beyond the basic basket. Funding for this system comes primarily from a progressive health tax collected by the National Insurance Institute, as well as from government budget allocations. This model ensures a broad and equitable distribution of healthcare resources across the population. Comparing the two, a key difference lies in the comprehensiveness of the basic coverage and the level of financial protection offered. While China is striving towards universality, its system often leaves individuals more exposed to high costs. Israel's model, with its mandatory enrollment and legally defined benefits package, aims to minimize out-of-pocket expenses for essential services, creating a strong safety net. Of course, no system is without its challenges. Israel faces issues like waiting times for certain procedures and the rising costs of new technologies, but the fundamental commitment to universal, equitable access is deeply embedded in its societal fabric. Next up, let's talk about education, the bedrock of individual opportunity and national progress. How do China and Israel approach the monumental task of educating their youth? In China, the government provides 9 years of free and compulsory education, typically covering primary school and junior secondary school. This is a massive achievement, ensuring a foundational level of literacy and numeracy for its enormous population. The emphasis on education in Chinese culture is profound, with immense societal pressure placed on academic success, often viewed as the primary pathway to social mobility and a better life for oneself and one's family. However, this system is characterized by intense competition. From a very young age, students are funneled into a highly exam-oriented environment, culminating in the formidable Gaokao, the National College Entrance Examination. The stakes for the Gaokao are extraordinarily high, as it largely determines not only if a student can attend university, but also which tier of university, significantly impacting future career prospects. While the 9 years of compulsory education are free, the costs associated with the system, such as supplementary tutoring, exam preparation materials, and the shadow education system, can be substantial for families striving to give their children an edge in this hyper-competitive landscape. Furthermore, higher education in China is not free. While universities are publicly funded to a large extent, students are required to pay tuition fees, as well as costs for accommodation and living expenses. Scholarships and financial aid are available, but access can be competitive, and the financial burden of sending a child to university can still be significant for many families, particularly those from lower-income backgrounds or rural areas. The government has been working to expand access to higher education and improve its quality, recognizing its critical role in driving innovation and economic development, but the competitive pressure and cost remain key features of the system. Now let's turn our attention to Israel's education system. Israel offers free education for a longer period, typically from the ages of 3 up to 18, encompassing preschool, primary, and secondary education. This commitment to early and extended free schooling reflects a societal value placed on providing a comprehensive educational foundation for all children. The Israeli education system is diverse, with different streams catering to the country's multicultural population, including state secular schools, state religious schools, and schools for the Arab and Druze communities, each with curricula that reflect their specific cultural and religious contexts, alongside a core national curriculum. When it comes to higher education, Israel also demonstrates a strong commitment to accessibility, though it's not entirely free. Universities and colleges are heavily subsidized by the government, which keeps tuition fees relatively low compared to many other developed countries. Additionally, there are various scholarships, grants, and financial aid programs available to students, often supported by both governmental and non-governmental organizations. This approach aims to ensure that higher education is within reach for a broad segment of the population, reducing financial barriers and promoting social mobility through advanced learning and skill development. Comparing the two, both nations clearly prioritize education, but their approaches and the student experience differ significantly. China's system, while providing a free compulsory base, is defined by its intense competition and the significant financial and personal pressures associated with the Gaokao and university costs. Israel's system offers a longer period of free schooling and more heavily subsidized higher education, potentially reducing some of the acute financial pressures, though academic rigor and challenges certainly exist there as well. The cultural emphasis on education is strong in both, but the pathways and pressures manifest in distinct ways, shaping the lives and futures of their young citizens. What happens when the working years wind down? Let's delve into the world of pensions, a critical component of social welfare that determines the financial security of a nation's elderly population. In China, the pension system is a complex patchwork, reflecting the country's diverse economic landscape and its ongoing transition. For urban workers, particularly those employed in state-owned enterprises or larger formal sector companies, there's a relatively more established state pension system. This system is typically funded through contributions from both employers and employees throughout their working lives, aiming to provide a regular income after retirement. However, the adequacy and coverage of these urban pensions can vary. The amount received often depends on factors like salary history, years of contribution, and the specific regulations of the province or municipality. For a significant portion of China's population, especially those in rural areas or working in the informal sector, the pension provisions are far more minimal. The new Rural Pension Scheme and the Urban Resident Pension Scheme were introduced to expand coverage to these groups, but the benefits provided are often quite low, sometimes barely enough for subsistence, meaning many elderly in rural areas still rely heavily on family support. The challenge for China is immense. An aging population, a consequence of past population control policies and increasing life expectancy, puts enormous pressure on its pension funds. Ensuring the sustainability of these funds while also trying to improve benefit levels and expand coverage to underserved populations is a major policy headache. The traditional reliance on family to care for the elderly is also being tested by urbanization and changing social norms, making the role of state pensions even more critical for the future. The government is actively exploring reforms, such as raising the retirement age and unifying different pension schemes, to address these demographic and financial pressures. Now let's consider Israel's approach to old age financial security. Israel has a multi-tiered pension system designed to provide a more comprehensive safety net. A foundational element is the universal old age benefit provided by the National Insurance Institute, NII. This is a basic, flat-rate pension paid to all elderly residents who meet the qualifying conditions, regardless of their income or work history. While this universal benefit itself might be modest, it provides a crucial baseline of support for all seniors, ensuring that everyone has at least some income in their later years. Beyond this universal benefit, Israel has a mandatory occupational pension system. Since 2008, it has been compulsory for all employers to make pension contributions for their employees, and employees are also required to contribute a portion of their salary. These funds are managed by private pension funds or insurance companies under government regulation. This system aims to ensure that individuals accumulate significant retirement savings throughout their working lives, supplementing the universal NII benefit. For the self-employed, there are also provisions encouraging and in some cases, mandating pension savings. The Israeli system, therefore, combines a universal state-provided baseline with mandatory employment-based savings, aiming for a more robust and equitable outcome for retirees. While challenges like ensuring adequate returns on pension investments and adapting to an aging population also exist in Israel, the framework is designed to provide a more consistent and widely accessible level of old-age income support compared to the more fragmented and regionally disparate system in China. The emphasis on mandatory contributions across the workforce is a key differentiator, aiming to prevent old age poverty more systematically. Losing a job can be a deeply unsettling experience, and the support available during such times is a key indicator of a society's social safety net. So, let's examine unemployment benefits in China and Israel. In China, the system of unemployment benefits is, like many of its social programs, developing and characterized by significant regional variations. There's an unemployment insurance fund, to which employers and sometimes employees contribute. To be eligible for benefits, individuals typically need to have contributed to the fund for a certain period, be involuntarily unemployed and registered as seeking work. However, the level and duration of these benefits are often quite limited. The amount paid is usually a fraction of the local minimum wage or the individual's previous salary, and it's often not enough to fully cover living expenses, especially in more expensive urban areas. Furthermore, the duration for which benefits can be claimed is typically capped, often ranging from a few months to a maximum of 2 years, depending on the length of previous employment and contributions. Access can also be a hurdle, with bureaucratic processes and varying eligibility criteria across different regions, making it challenging for some to claim what they're entitled to. A significant portion of China's workforce, particularly migrant workers who move from rural areas to cities for employment, may face additional difficulties in accessing unemployment benefits. Their registration status, or hukou, can impact their eligibility for social services in the cities where they work. While reforms are ongoing to improve the system, making it more inclusive and adequate, the current unemployment support in China is generally less generous and comprehensive compared to many developed economies. This reflects a historical emphasis on employment stability through state-led enterprises and a more recent reliance on rapid economic growth to absorb labor. Turning to Israel, the approach to unemployment benefits is notably more generous, forming a significant part of its social security framework. Administered by the National Insurance Institute, or NII, unemployment benefits are available to Israeli residents who have lost their jobs and meet specific criteria regarding their previous employment period and contributions. The system is designed to provide a substantial income replacement to help individuals manage financially while they search for new employment. This reflects a societal understanding that job transitions are a normal part of a dynamic economy. The level of benefits in Israel can be quite significant, often calculated as a percentage of the individual's average salary over a preceding period, potentially covering up to 70% of their previous earnings, although there is a ceiling on the maximum benefit amount. The duration of these benefits is also defined, typically lasting for several months, with the exact period depending on factors like the claimant's age and the number of dependents they have. To receive benefits, individuals are usually required to register with the employment service and actively seek work, demonstrating their efforts to re-enter the labor market. The contrast here is quite stark. Israel's system offers a more robust cushion for those who find themselves out of work, providing a higher replacement income and a more structured support mechanism. This can reduce the immediate financial panic associated with job loss and allow individuals a more stable period to find suitable re-employment. While China's system provides some basic support, its limitations in terms of amount, duration, and accessibility, especially for certain segments of the workforce, mean that the experience of unemployment can be considerably more precarious there. This difference underscores varying philosophies on the state's role in mitigating labor market risks. Having a safe and affordable place to live is a fundamental human need. So, how do China and Israel assist their citizens in securing housing? In China, with its massive population and rapid urbanization, housing has been a major focus of government policy and a significant challenge. The government has implemented various programs aimed at providing government-subsidized housing, particularly in urban areas where the influx of people seeking work has put immense pressure on the housing market. These programs often involve the construction of public rental housing or price-capped commodity housing targeted at low to middle-income families. Despite these efforts, shortages of affordable housing remain a persistent issue in many Chinese cities. The demand often outstrips the supply, and eligibility criteria for subsidized housing can be stringent, sometimes leading to long waiting lists. The sheer scale of urbanization means that millions of people have moved from rural areas to cities, creating an unprecedented need for new housing stock. While the construction boom in China has been monumental, much of it has been market-rate housing, which can be prohibitively expensive for average workers, leading to concerns about housing affordability and the risk of property bubbles in some areas. The government also plays a role in regulating the housing market, attempting to curb speculation and control rapidly rising prices in major urban centers through measures like purchase restrictions and higher down payment requirements. For many ordinary Chinese citizens, particularly young people and new families, the dream of owning a home in a desirable urban location can be a significant financial struggle, often requiring substantial family support and long-term debt. The challenge is to balance the need for new housing with affordability and sustainable urban development. Now let's look at Israel, where housing is also a significant social and economic issue, particularly concerning affordability in high-demand areas like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The Israeli government has several mechanisms to support citizens with housing. One key approach is offering subsidized mortgages. Programs like Mahir Lamishtakin or Buyer's Price are designed to help eligible first-time home buyers, often young families or specific demographic groups, purchase homes at below-market prices by providing land discounts to developers who then offer these homes through a lottery system. Israel also has a system of public housing, though its scale has diminished over the decades. Public housing units are typically rented out at subsidized rates to low-income families, new immigrants, the elderly, and individuals with disabilities who meet strict eligibility criteria. However, the stock of public housing is limited, and waiting lists can be very long, meaning it's not a solution available to everyone in need. The government also provides rental assistance in some cases, offering subsidies to help eligible households afford rent in the private market. Comparing the two, both countries face significant housing affordability challenges, driven by different demographic and economic pressures. China's challenge is magnified by the sheer scale of its urbanization and population, leading to large-scale public housing construction efforts that still struggle to meet demand. Israel, a smaller country, focuses more on targeted subsidies like discounted mortgages and a limited public housing sector, but still grapples with high property prices in central regions. In both nations, securing affordable and adequate housing remains a major concern for a significant portion of the population, prompting ongoing policy debates and interventions. The arrival of a new child is a profound moment, and the support parents receive during this time is crucial for family well-being and child development. How do China and Israel approach maternity and paternity leave? In China, the standard provision for maternity leave is 98 days, as stipulated by national law. This period is intended to allow mothers to recover from childbirth and bond with their newborn. During this leave, new mothers are generally entitled to receive a maternity allowance, which is often paid through the social insurance system, typically at a rate related to their average wage. However, the specific implementation and generosity of maternity leave can vary significantly by province and even by city. Some regions offer extended maternity leave beyond the national standard of 98 days, sometimes adding an extra 30, 60, or even 90 days, often as an incentive to encourage childbirth in the context of changing demographic policies. The funding and enforcement of these extended leaves can also differ. While the 98 days are a legal right, ensuring full compliance and adequate financial support across all types of employers, especially smaller private enterprises, can be a challenge. Paternity leave in China, on the other hand, is far more limited and less standardized. While there's growing recognition of the importance of fathers' involvement, national law doesn't mandate extensive paternity leave. Some provinces or cities offer a few days, perhaps 7 to 15 days, of paid paternity leave, but it's not a universal entitlement across the country, and the duration is generally quite short. This reflects a more traditional division of caregiving roles, though societal attitudes are slowly evolving, and there are discussions about expanding paternity leave to encourage more shared parental responsibilities. Now let's examine the situation in Israel. Israel offers a more generous and well-established system for maternity leave. Eligible new mothers are entitled to 15 weeks, or 105 days of paid maternity leave, during which they receive a maternity allowance from the National Insurance Institute. This allowance is calculated based on their previous earnings, up to a certain ceiling. Furthermore, mothers can choose to extend their leave for an additional 11 weeks for a total of 26 weeks or about 6 months, though this extended period is typically unpaid but their job is protected. Paternity leave in Israel, while not as extensive as maternity leave, is also a recognized benefit. Fathers are entitled to 6 days of leave around the time of birth, which includes the day of birth itself and the following 5 days. Part of this leave can be paid if taken from their accrued vacation days, and there are provisions for fathers to share a portion of the paid maternity leave if the mother chooses to return to work early. There's also an option for a new father to take 1 week of unpaid leave concurrently with the mother's maternity leave, and his job is protected during this time. Comparing the two, Israel provides a slightly longer standard paid maternity leave and more formally recognized, albeit still modest, paternity leave provisions. The Israeli system is also more centralized through the NII, ensuring more consistent application of benefits. While China's 98-day national standard is significant, the regional variations and minimal paternity leave highlight a different approach to supporting new parents. Both countries are grappling with how best to support families and encourage healthy child development, with ongoing discussions about refining these policies to meet contemporary needs and promote gender equality in caregiving. Raising children involves significant financial costs, and many countries provide direct financial support to families to help alleviate these burdens. Let's see how China and Israel handle child benefits. In China, direct universal child benefit payments from the central government are not a widespread feature of the social welfare system in the same way they are in many Western countries. Historically, the focus was more on population control, and while that policy has shifted, the mechanisms for direct child subsidies are still developing and are not uniformly applied across the nation. However, this doesn't mean there's no financial support for families with children. Some regions or cities in China may offer limited subsidies or one-time bonuses for newborns, particularly in areas trying to encourage higher birth rates. More broadly, the Chinese government has introduced tax deductions for child-rearing expenses. Parents can claim deductions on their taxable income for costs related to education, childcare, and other child-related expenditures. This indirect support helps reduce the overall tax burden on families with children, effectively increasing their disposable income, though the actual benefit depends on income level and tax liability. The approach is thus more targeted and often delivered through the tax system, rather than direct monthly payments for every child. The emphasis is often on alleviating specific costs, like education, rather than providing a general untied cash benefit. As China continues to adjust its demographic policies and address concerns about the costs of raising children, there are ongoing discussions about potentially expanding or reforming child-related financial support to make it more direct and impactful for a wider range of families, especially those with lower incomes. Now let's turn to Israel, which has a well-established system of direct child allowances. The National Insurance Institute, or NII, pays a monthly child allowance known as Kitzbat Yeladim for every child in Israel under the age of 18. This is a universal benefit, meaning it's paid to families regardless of their income level, though the amount can be adjusted based on specific circumstances. The principle behind this is to provide a consistent level of support to all families to help with the general costs of raising children. The amount of the child allowance in Israel typically increases with each additional child in the family, meaning larger families receive proportionally more support. For example, the allowance for the first child might be a certain amount, and the allowance for the second, third, and fourth child might be slightly higher per child, while allowances for the fifth child and subsequent children often receive an even larger monthly sum per child. This structure is intended to provide greater assistance to families with more children, acknowledging the increased financial demands they face. These payments are made directly to the parents, usually the mother. Comparing the two, Israel's system of universal, direct monthly child allowances offers a more predictable and broad-based form of financial support for child-rearing compared to China's more regionally varied subsidies and tax deduction-focused approach. The Israeli model provides a regular cash flow to families, which can be used at their discretion to cover various child-related expenses. China's system, while offering some relief through tax breaks, may not provide the same level of direct or immediate financial assistance, particularly for lower-income families who may have limited tax liability to begin with. Military service is a significant life event for young people in many countries, shaping their early adulthood and often intertwined with national identity and security. Let's explore the systems of military service in China and Israel. In China, military service is, according to the law, mandatory for male citizens who reach the age of 18. The typical term of service is generally between 18 to 22 months, depending on the branch of the People's Liberation Army and the specific role. The Constitution states that it is the sacred duty of every citizen of the People's Republic of China to defend the motherland and resist aggression. However, in practice, China's vast population means that the PLA can be highly selective. With millions of young men reaching conscription age each year, the military can afford to choose the most qualified candidates based on physical fitness, education level, and sometimes political reliability. Therefore, while technically a universal male conscription system, it often operates more like a selective service system, with many young men not being called up for active duty. For women, while the law allows for their conscription, in practice, military service for women in China is voluntary, and typically involves recruitment for specific roles, often requiring higher educational qualifications. Those who do serve in the PLA undergo rigorous training and are deployed across various branches including the Army, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Force, and Strategic Support Force. Military service can offer certain benefits such as vocational training and for some, particularly from rural or less privileged backgrounds, it can be a pathway to social advancement or stable employment after service. However, the sheer number of eligible young men means that not everyone will or can serve, making the experience of conscription less universal than the law might suggest. Now let's look at Israel, where military service is a far more pervasive and deeply ingrained aspect of life for the majority of its citizens. Military service is mandatory for most Jewish, Druze, and Circassian citizens once they reach the age of 18. For men, the typical length of service in the Israel Defense Forces is currently 32 months, though this has been subject to change over time. For women, the mandatory service period is typically 24 months, although those serving in certain combat or specialized roles may serve longer, similar to men. The conscription in Israel is much closer to being truly universal for the eligible population groups. Exemptions are granted primarily for Arab citizens of Israel, who can volunteer, Orthodox Jewish women who declare religious objections, and some Orthodox Jewish men engaged in full-time religious study, though the latter is a contentious and evolving issue in Israeli society. For most Israeli youth, service in the IDF is a rite of passage, a formative experience that shapes their identity, skills, and social networks. Comparing the two, the most striking difference is the practical universality of conscription. In Israel, military service directly impacts a much larger proportion of its young adult population, for both men and women in the majority groups, creating a shared national experience. In China, while legally mandated for men, the selective nature means a smaller percentage actually serves. The role of the military in national life and identity also differs. In Israel, it's a central institution due to its security context, while in China, the PLA is a powerful state organ, but conscription itself is a less universally shared individual experience. Tax systems are not just about collecting revenue. They are also powerful tools for implementing social policy, offering benefits and incentives that can shape behavior and provide relief. Let's examine tax benefits in China and Israel. China employs a progressive income tax system, meaning that individuals with higher incomes pay a larger percentage of their earnings in tax. This is a common approach globally, aimed at ensuring a degree of fairness and redistributing wealth to some extent. The system has undergone various reforms to adjust tax brackets and standard deductions in response to changing economic conditions and income levels. In terms of specific tax benefits related to social welfare, China has been gradually expanding these. As we touched upon in the child benefits chapter, one significant area is the introduction of special individual income tax deductions for families. These deductions can cover expenses such as children's education, continuing education for adults, healthcare costs for serious illnesses, mortgage interest for a first home, and expenses for supporting elderly parents. These itemized deductions are designed to reduce the tax burden on individuals and families facing these specific, often substantial costs, thereby indirectly supporting social welfare goals. The implementation and uptake of these deductions can be complex, requiring taxpayers to maintain records and understand the eligibility criteria. The overall impact of these benefits depends on an individual's income level and their ability to claim these deductions effectively. While these measures provide some relief, the Chinese tax system is still evolving in its use of targeted benefits to support social objectives, with ongoing discussions about how to make it more effective in promoting equity and alleviating financial pressures on households. The focus is often on supporting key life stage expenses like education and housing. Now, let's consider Israel's tax system, which is also progressive, with tax rates increasing as income rises. Israel makes extensive use of its tax system to provide a wide range of benefits and credits, particularly aimed at supporting families, encouraging education, and recognizing contributions like military service. Parents, for instance, are entitled to credit points against their income tax liability for each child, which directly reduces the amount of tax they owe. These credit points can be quite valuable, significantly lowering the tax burden for families with children, especially for those with multiple children. Furthermore, Israel offers tax benefits for students pursuing higher education, often in the form of additional credit points or deductions for tuition fees, encouraging investment in human capital. Discharged soldiers from the IDF are also eligible for significant tax benefits for a period after completing their mandatory service, helping them transition to civilian life and studies or employment. There are also tax breaks related to pension savings, contributions to charitable organizations, and for residents of certain peripheral or development areas, all designed to achieve specific social and economic policy goals. Comparing the two, Israel's tax system appears to offer a more extensive and often more direct system of tax benefits, particularly through its credit point system, which can provide substantial relief to targeted groups like parents and discharged soldiers. China's system of special deductions is a step in a similar direction, but the Israeli model of credit points often translates into a more straightforward and quantifiable reduction in tax owed. Both countries utilize progressive taxation, but Israel's integration of social benefits directly into the tax code through credit points is a noteworthy feature, making the tax system a very active instrument of social policy. Beyond specific programs like healthcare or pensions, what is the general state of social welfare assistance for those most in need in China and Israel? In China, the primary system for direct assistance to low-income families is the Dabao, or Minimum Living Standard Guarantee Scheme. This program is designed to provide a basic subsistence allowance to households whose income falls below a locally determined poverty line. The Dabao system is administered at the local government level, meaning that the poverty line and the amount of assistance can vary significantly from one city or county to another. The intention of Dabao is to provide a final safety net for the poorest segment of the population, ensuring they have enough to cover essential living costs. However, the coverage and adequacy of Dabao have been subjects of ongoing discussion and reform. Challenges include accurately identifying eligible households, ensuring that benefits are sufficient to meet basic needs, especially in areas with high living costs, and overcoming potential issues of exclusion or local administrative hurdles. While Dabao represents a crucial lifeline for millions, its inconsistent application and sometimes modest benefit levels mean that poverty and hardship can still persist. Beyond Dabao, China also has various other forms of social assistance, such as support for people with disabilities, disaster relief programs, and medical financial assistance programs designed to help low-income individuals with catastrophic health expenses. However, the overall social welfare infrastructure is still developing, particularly in terms of providing comprehensive, long-term support and services beyond basic cash transfers. The focus has often been on economic development as the primary means of poverty reduction, with targeted assistance playing a supplementary role. Now let's turn to Israel, which is widely recognized as having a strong and comprehensive welfare state, though it has undergone reforms and faces ongoing debates about its scope and funding. The National Insurance Institute, or NII, is the central pillar of this system, administering a wide array of social security programs, including income support for needy families. This income assurance benefit, or Haftachat Haknasa, is provided to individuals and families whose income falls below a certain threshold and who are unable to support themselves, for reasons such as unemployment, disability, or old age. Israel's welfare system aims to provide not just financial assistance but also a range of social services. This includes support for single-parent families, benefits and services for people with disabilities, support for the elderly beyond pensions, and various programs for at-risk youth and vulnerable populations. The system is characterized by a legal entitlement to many of these benefits, meaning that individuals who meet the criteria have a right to receive them, creating a more robust and predictable safety net. Comparing the two, Israel's general social welfare system appears more comprehensive, institutionalized, and rights-based, with the NIE playing a central coordinating role. While China's Dabao system is a significant effort to address extreme poverty, the overall framework of social assistance is more fragmented and subject to greater regional variation in terms of generosity and accessibility. Israel's model reflects a stronger historical commitment to social solidarity and a broader definition of the state's responsibility in ensuring a minimum standard of living and well-being for all its citizens, though it too faces challenges in meeting all needs effectively within budgetary constraints. And there you have it, a whirlwind tour through the intricate and ever-evolving social welfare landscapes of China and Israel. As we've seen, there's no single right way to construct a social safety net. Each country's approach is a unique product of its history, culture, economic realities, and political priorities. From the colossal scale of China's efforts to provide basic security to its 1.4 billion citizens, to Israel's comprehensive rights-based system forged in a different set of national circumstances, the contrasts are as illuminating as the common goals of supporting human dignity and potential. What I hope this journey has highlighted is the sheer complexity and the profound human impact of these systems. These aren't just abstract policies, they shape lives, determine opportunities, and reflect a society's deepest values about community and mutual responsibility. Whether it's healthcare, education, or support in old age, The choices nations make have real, tangible consequences for their people. Understanding these differences doesn't just teach us about other countries, it encourages us to critically examine our own systems and consider how we might better meet the needs of all members of our society. Thanks for joining us on this comparative journey through the social welfare systems of China and Israel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more insightful content. We've only scratched the surface, of course, and these systems are constantly changing, so the conversation is always ongoing. See you next time.